Hey everyone, and welcome. So you did it. You found the perfect place, you made an offer, and they accepted. That is awesome, congratulations. But that moment of celebration, it's really just the beginning of a whole new journey. So today, let's pull out the map and really look at the route that takes you from that signed contract all the way to getting those brand new keys in your hand. It's the question on every single home buyer and seller's mind, right? The ink is dry, the contract is signed, so what actually happens between now and closing day? Well, that in-between time is jam-packed with critical steps, deadlines, and a bunch of responsibilities for everyone. Let's break it all down.
Okay, so the very first thing you've got to understand is that a signed contract isn't the finish line. Not at all. It's more like the starting gun for what's called the executory period. This is that crucial time where both you and the seller have specific jobs you absolutely have to do to get to that closing table.
Now, the official term for this is an executory contract. I know, it sounds super technical and maybe a little intimidating, but all it really means is that the agreement is active and it's binding, but there are still promises that need to be kept. The seller has to get the house ready for you, and the buyer's got to get all their financing locked in, plus a whole bunch of other things. The contract is what keeps everybody on the right track.
This right here is honestly the best way to think about it. The contract isn't some scary legal document to be afraid of, it's your guide, it's your roadmap. Every single paragraph is a specific instruction, it's a signpost telling you what to do next, when to do it by. It's all designed to make the whole process as clear and predictable as possible.
All right, the next leg of our journey is all about the money. Let's be real, a huge part of this process involves the financials, specifically figuring out who pays for what and how all those different costs get divided up. Luckily, our contract roadmap is super clear on this.
So, the million-dollar question. Who pays for what? Well, paragraph 12 of the standard contract lays it all out for us. Typically, the seller's going to handle costs that are related to clearing the title. Stuff like preparing the deed and releasing any old liens. The buyer, on the other hand, usually covers expenses tied to their loan, like appraisal fees and credit reports. Now, keep in mind, these points can be negotiated, but having this standard breakdown right in the contract is designed to prevent any nasty surprises at the closing table.
And that brings us to this really key financial concept called proration. Think about it like this. What about ongoing costs like property taxes? The seller lived in the house for, say, the first half of the year, and the buyer is going to live there for the second half. Proration is simply the math we use to split those annual bills fairly, so each person only pays for the chunk of time they actually own the property. It just ensures a nice, clean financial break.
And just like that, we've arrived. We're at our destination, closing day. This is the big moment everyone's been working so hard for. But what actually happens in that room? And maybe more importantly, when do you really get the keys? The closing itself is a really structured event. First things first, the seller officially transfers ownership by signing the deed. Second, the buyer pays up, and they do it with what's called good funds. We're not talking a personal check here. This is guaranteed money, like a wire transfer or a cashier's check. And finally, a whole stack of documents get signed by both parties to make the sale and the loan totally official. Now listen up, because this is a tiny detail that trips up a ton of people. You don't just get the keys when the papers are signed. That part is the closing. You get the keys when the money has officially been transferred and received. That part is the funding. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay between the two, so it's a really important distinction to know about when you're scheduling your movers. And here's a detail you probably wouldn't expect to see in a legal contract, but it's so important these days: the smart device handover. Modern contracts now specify that the seller has to give you all the login info for things like smart thermostats, video doorbells, you name it. And just as importantly, they have to completely wipe their own access from their phones and computers. Of course, not every journey is a perfect straight line. Sometimes things go wrong. But the good news is your contract roadmap has built-in contingency plans. You can think of them as detours and safety features, and they're designed to protect both the buyer and the seller when the unexpected happens. Let's talk about a big fear for every buyer. You are days, maybe hours away from closing, and a huge storm comes through and damages the roof. Does the whole deal just fall apart? Well, not necessarily. Paragraph 14, which covers something called casualty loss, gives the buyer very clear options.
So in a scenario like that, the contract actually puts the buyer in the driver's seat. You have options. 1, you can just walk away, terminate the contract, and get your deposit back. 2, you can agree to wait up to 15 days to give the seller time to make repairs. Or 3, you can decide to take the house as is, along with the seller's insurance claim, and you manage the repairs yourself.
See, the contract provides a clear, structured way to handle a potential disaster.
But what if one person simply fails to follow the contract? They just back out? That's called a default. If the buyer defaults, say by backing out for no valid reason, the seller can often keep the earnest money. If the seller is the one who defaults, the buyer gets their money back. And in either case, the contract allows the person who is wrong to sue to force the sale to happen. That's a powerful legal remedy, and it's known as specific performance.
Our journey isn't quite over yet. Let's explore a couple of final side trips. These are special situations that are really important to know about, even if they don't apply to every single person.
Okay, what if the buyer needs to move in a few days before closing? Or what if the seller needs to stay a couple of days after? You can't just do that on a handshake. The contract is very clear. You need a formal, temporary residential lease for any time you're living in the house outside the official closing date, even if it's just for a day or two. This protects everybody by clearly spelling out the terms of that short-term stay.
And finally, this is a big one. The contract itself has a critical warning right inside of it. It says, and I quote, "Real estate brokers and sales agents are prohibited from practicing law." This is so vital to understand. Your agent is your guide, they are your navigator, but they are not your lawyer. Any custom changes or special provisions have to be drafted by you or an attorney to be valid and, frankly, to avoid some serious legal risks.
So, we end right back where we started. The contract is your roadmap. It takes you from offer accepted to welcome home, and it has every turn, every signpost, and every possible detour clearly marked out. It's designed for clarity and it's designed for protection. But the final question for you to think about is this: who is helping you read that map? Who's navigating this journey with you? A great agent or a great attorney makes all the difference in the world.